Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've been talking a lot over the past couple of months about Berg Construction reaching sort of a milestone, right? The 20-year mark. Pretty exciting. But something we just sort of talked about was that it's actually been about a decade of the three of us working together, right? A little, I'm almost 10. Dan, you're almost 12. Almost 12. And so that's interesting, right? There's a lot that's transpired in the last 10 or so years of us being a group here at Berg.
Yeah, so it's you think about it, and in terms of it's got to be 11. As I do the math, it's got to be 11 that I'm almost at. Brian, you must be right.
I was thinking 11, but
I think you're right. But because I was thinking about it, like, so for me, when I say like what's changed is you're talking about me going from having basically a 1-year-old daughter to having 3 kids, who are like now people, so like first just stay outside of work, right? Like Bryan, you would have gone from having 3 kids who were like, just kids to having like adult children now who are out in college and in the world, and
all of mine would have been in elementary school still, I think, 5 to 11, whatever that range is. And
if you're watching the video, if you can see behind my head, there's a piece of artwork up there. When Addie was probably 5 or 6, I'm guessing, she came in one day and made this piece of artwork. It's lasted a really long time, but this was when she was a little.
And I mean, Ford, you've gone from no kids, just fending for yourself with you and Tamara, being able to go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted.
Yeah, well, no kids, not married,
but Ford and Tamara not married. Ford and Tamara married. They've been a couple for as long as I knew
for
them.
a long time.
So yeah,
that's true.
Yep.
But now having multiple kids there, so there's just when you talk about how that impacts us in work personally, where we've gone. And then let alone, work like we talk about. And we've talked about it with the 20-year thing. When I came in, I think Ford had maybe 6 to 8 employees, maybe.
It's a blur like somewhere back there.
It's a blur back there. But I mean, you go from that to this, it's just, it's been a really crazy,
So how about we
decade.
do it this way? Like, because there's so much we've probably forgotten from there, but like, there's a couple pinnacle points I think that like happened over those years that like set us on the right path or whatever it was. And like, for me, I still remember that first time we had a planning meeting at my house. It was like a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Luke was with us. That's still at that point. And we sat down and just like came up with some crazy ideas.
Was that had we just read
that one book about the guy that ran the generator company and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Like the one
what
page
was the
guy.
name of that book?
I was actually thinking the other day I should reread that book.
That's not the good to great one.
No. This was like a guy that he like ran like 4 or 5 companies, and he like, I have everything I want to do on one page. It was really kind of neat because it was simplified. Right. And I think I read it, then we all read it, and then we're like, all right, we're gonna have this meeting, and we sat around for a couple hours and like wrote stuff on a board that I was like, yeah, okay,
yeah.
cool.
So it's funny. Ford had brought up EOS to me a few weeks ago, the EOS system, and I like started looking into it. He said like, look into it, get a book, read it, see what you think. And so I was looking at it, and all of a sudden I was like, well, I wonder what Nina had us do, and it was the EOS system, and I didn't remember that. And so I pulled up the exact papers he's talking about, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, we wrote all these crazy ideas down, and then we went and did it.
Right.
And I called Ford and I was like, that alone makes me say, maybe I should do this. Cause what would happen if we made crazy goals again now? I assume then we'd have a solid team. We would go do that thing. Then, that which is measured gets accomplished sort of thing. You know what I mean? But I was so taken back when I looked at the paper to see not only that we had achieved the goals, but knowing what it was like when we wrote them, how crazy they were. And then we went and achieved them. It was a really, like, if you go back and look at them, right, I think it would be strange. You'd be like, wow, that's crazy that we did those things. And then we sat there. I mean, I remember the pencil. Do you remember that? She had some giant pencil or stick or something.
Talking pencil.
We talked to each other. We talked over each other. She's like, you have to hold the pencil if you want to talk.
Yeah. Our podcast would have been terrible then. Can you imagine?
We'd be passing that pencil around.
You two wouldn't have gotten a word in edgewise.
Yeah, no, I do. I remember that first meeting. I thought that some of that process of us early on sitting down with Nina on I think then it was like every 2 weeks or something, but on a regular basis to sort of like, cement the relationships and like figure out paths and responsibilities and all of those things. I think that was pretty formative for us years ago. I do think that like, like you said, like when you got here being 6 or 8 people, and when I got here, maybe 10 or 12 people, I like adding the key pieces that we did at the right times, looking back and like adding Scott Gardner to the group and like, adding Dylan Reese to the group. And like, there's been a variety of them, but like the ones that stick out, like to sort of shape the what comes next. And that's, and now you just look at it and you're like, well, this is who we are. This is what we've been. But at the time, those were big decisions for us that really kind of changed the trajectory.
Yeah, and we didn't make all the right decisions. We made a lot of questionable decisions along the way, trying to figure it out. And I sort of go the same route, but I like go right from the beginning. Like I remember when Ford first proposed that I would leave where I was and a bigger company and come join Ford. And I had a 1-year-old, and I was like, coming out of my situation where I was mentally, and thinking about it of that he had the vision to say like, I'm gonna bring Dan in, and he's going to be able to do these things and see what he thought I could do. And then hopefully if I've, achieved most of what he thought I could do. But then I also remember it with you. Like I remember when the idea was that we were going to bring on somebody to be a CFO role. Like it wasn't a CFO at that point, but to be that role to help us and somebody to try and wrangle what we had done. And I remember Nina talking to Ford and I and saying like, well, it has to be somebody that can deal with you and Dan and manage you and Dan. And she would bring in these ridiculous accountants that we were like, this isn't going to work. Like, first of all, you're making it a challenge to say like, this person will control you and Ford, and be like, that's not going to happen just because you're saying it. But then I remember Ford came to me and he said like, I got this guy that I think it could work. I know from like a banking relationship or some other thing I know, but Nina's not going to like it, but I think it could work. And I remember him saying that to me. And then I remember he proposed it to Nina, and Nina was like, he's not an accountant. And we're like, yeah, we don't need an accountant. That's not what we need. So it's always been something really crazy of Ford's that he identifies people for roles that don't actually exist. And with skill sets they may not even have. They have the skill set, but have not been tested, have not been proved.
Sure. Yeah.
And he identifies that, and he's done it numerous other times afterwards. It's been a process as we get used to Tori here, but Tori's another one, honestly, that comes to mind. The idea that in dealing with everything we're dealing with, we're going to bring on somebody to help with marketing. Like that was when he told me, I was like, I like Tori, but that's kind of a crazy thought. Like of all the things that I need help with right now, I don't know that that definitely was not tops on my list. Sure. I had some other more pressing issues I thought that I should deal with before dealing with that. But he sort of, and it wasn't like he said to me, hey, I'm bringing in this person with this huge resume that's going to do exactly what you want. It wasn't that. Like in other words, and he's done that so many times. Like you said Dylan Reese or Scott Gardner. Right. Both of them had skill sets. Like Scott's wasn't exactly the same, but like had skill sets that identified that they would be a good fit. What really amazes me is when Ford goes out and finds, you or I or some of the other people who are able to do these roles that didn't actually come from the role. Cause that's just, it's something he has that, most people don't. And that's been like a hallmark of the last 11 plus years of me and Ford together. And thinking about that is just watching him do it. And then just trying to develop and maintain the faith that he's going to make some crazy decision from my perspective, but it's only because I can't see what he sees. I don't see it. So I have to trust him that he's going to do it and then follow through. So that's been interesting for me.
I remember when we were talking with Bryan, I was actually out of town. I was in Key West of all places, because I just remember I was with people and I had to go step away to talk to him about it. And it was like, oh, well, this, and this, because he, had a pretty good job in your previous life. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to make this work somehow. I don't know how, because at that point, whatever the number was seemed crazy to us based on what we had previously done. I was like, all right, we're going to make this work. And it's like, there's been so many funny things, going to different events, peer groups, all that kind of stuff together as help the different things, or meals or different stuff like that. But, you know, the reality is that like we've grown together so much. But the interesting thing is that we're not done, right? Like, so we got to keep like improving or keep doing better because the world keeps changing around us. So we can't, you know.
Yeah.
You talk to some old time owners and they're like, oh, this is the way it's going to be. I'm like, well, you'll be out in about 3 years. Cause like, unfortunately, that's just not the nature of life in general. Like you just can't stop learning or keep changing and adjusting and learning new things.
No, I love that you said that because, you know, like the three of us are, well, I guess it depends on who you ask, but we're relatively young men, right? Not one of us is a couple of years from retirement here or anything like that. So I think that like knowing like the where we started to where we got to and knowing that the path doesn't dead end here. It's not, we're not just coasting off into the sunset or anything like that. I think that that's an important piece of the story.
Well, the other thing, you know, I think too, in terms of like physical location, right? Like we have always been in this building. Like, I started in this building. You had just, I mean, I remember when you brought me here, when you bought the building before I worked for you and you said like, this was your plan. I wasn't in the plan yet, but well, maybe I was, and I didn't know I was in the plan, but I was not part of the plan yet actively. But you think about, you know, you and Bryan and I were talking about it the other day that when we started to grow and we started to run out of space.
Yeah.
And so we went from Bryan had an okay office in the front, and I had the nice office because I had Ford's office at that point. You had moved upstairs, and so I moved out of what is right now Dylan or Brad's office. Right, I was in Brad's office. No,
you were in Dylan's office.
I was in Dylan's office, so I had no windows. And so I moved there, and we decided, Bryan and I just got together, and we were like, what if we just moved to the paving shed? Right, which that's what we call it. Those that work here know what the paving shed is.
Yeah.
Maybe. Actually, some of the younger guys, newer guys might not even know.
The driver's lounge.
Yes, the driver's lounge, perhaps. I, you know, but we went over there, and that's one of my fondest memories of like the space, because Bryan and I were alone, but together, right? So we were like separated from everybody. So we would like play our very different musical tastes, but both very varied, back and forth. And there was a window between us that actually Colt had put in so that he and Becca could talk when it was their offices.
Not so much a window, kind of just a hole in the wall.
Kind of just a hole in the wall.
You might have had a frame around it.
And we were Bryan and I were talking about it the other day at your peer group dinner. And Bryan and I both fondly remembered it, and our wives both commented on a number of very unpleasant things about that space. They were like, "How can you? That's what you remember?" And I was like, "Because I don't know. That's what I remember. They were like, "You don't remember like the 30 air fresheners or the 2 air purifiers you had to run to be over in that building?" And I was like, "No, that is true. We did have to do that.
That was true.
That was true. You're right."
The plant in the bathroom.
Yeah, the plant in the bathroom. There was all kinds of stuff. Yeah. There was all kinds of stuff.
I think like there's a little, didn't we put like a little exhaust fan in the dryer vent?
I did. I wired an exhaust fan into what was the dryer vent so that I could try and push as much air out of that building as possible. Yeah. So, but I remember it that way. And now this is the new norm for you and I, right? Sure. Like the new norm for you and I is these just offices that everybody who comes to visit is like, wow, this is an amazing space. And that's become our reality, right? Like that's where we are. You know what I mean? And it's when you think about that kind of change, let alone the guys, you know, like the pieces of equipment. Every time I walk down the steps, I look at the picture of Joe moving. I think we own that rock truck.
The old 35.
The old A35 with the lowboy. We had just gotten the lowboy, and it was like one of the first things he moved, and we moved our own rock truck. And I took a picture of it, and I was like, this is crazy. We not only own a rock truck, we own a truck to move the rock truck. This is unbelievable. You know what I mean? And now, you know, you see, I mean, you know, we have several rock trucks and multiple tractors. You know what I mean? And we can move virtually anything we want, and bigger machines and more, you know, so it doesn't matter which piece you look at. We've grown and become this other thing. And I think for me, the exciting part is figuring out what the next decade looks like, to say like, okay, now how do we make this something that we can hand off to, you know, the next group of leaders who are going to run Berg Construction and take it wherever it's going beyond us? How do we stabilize it and formalize it a little bit, which is crazy, right? Because you and I talk about this, that I like to formalize
Did the machine just break? He just said formalize it.
I like formalizing things, just not for me to have to be the one that is, you know, subject to the formalizing.
You don't want to be the formal one.
I don't want to be the formal one, but I acknowledge that formalizing things helps with consistency. So I just don't want to be subject to it. I think if Ford's going to be honest, if we put like a light on him and it's a lie detector, I think Ford would probably admit that actually is true of him too, that he likes formalizing as long as he's not at all involved with it, but it does create consistency that it can run and know what he's getting. Is that
something like that?
Something like that. Something like that. But I think that's the exciting part for me, to say like, okay, now how do we take this thing we built and make it something that can replicate, whether it be, a Myers, an H&K, a Beaver, a Sargent, one of these companies that you're talking, you're not talking Aiden,
20 years
you're not talking
celebrations.
Aiden or Savannah or Charlotte working here. You're talking their kids working here, or their kids' kids working, getting 3-4 generations out, something that is a generational thing. That's, ultimately that's the goal I would set. Like if you said to me right now, like what's a stretch goal for you? It's to make this a company that will be around in 4 generations.
Sure. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's interesting, to think about, right? For sure. Cause you do there's fingerprints all over, the business of like things that have happened because of the interactions that we've had or our family members inside of the building, et cetera. I came across something yesterday. I was dealing with a computer issue, and like on one of the like printers downstairs was this little label that 4 or 5 years ago, when Gavin was working here part-time over the summer, he there was a problem with that thing. And so he made a label with the instructions on how to fix it for the gal who was at the front desk. I sent him a picture of it. Right. And I'm like, he's like, does that thing still work? And I was like, only because the label exists, I think. Right. and he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, we were probably paying him like $8 an hour or something like that. He's like, that's probably money well spent if the label maker still does its job. But, it made me think about not only where we've come, where we've been, et cetera, but like the what comes next piece, and not so much a handoff. I don't necessarily see it as like a handoff to whoever's coming behind us. That will obviously happen at some point. It has to. Like none of us will exist forever or be able to do this forever, and it probably won't be the right fit forever. But as we continue to transition, as we continue to grow and expand, like the things that we've done over the last 10 years can't be identical, but I think they'll help shape the things that we do together over the next 10 plus years. Whatever those things might look like. The office story is a fun one for me because, as we've considered the next 10 years, does this space still meet all of our needs? And whether it's short term or long term, as we get kind of pulled potentially into different spaces or different office arrangements, or give up what's become normal or comfortable because of the challenge and the need to grow and excel and to do something different, how do we hang on to the things that have made us good at what we do, the group that we've become, so that we can continue to duplicate those successes, whether or not we're all sitting in the same room looking at each other with microphones, or if we're sitting in different parts of the county, the state, the country, whatever it might be, in an effort to continue to provide the solidarity that each of these organizations has come to expect. So, yeah, I don't know. Long-winded, but.
Well, no, I mean, that kind of ties it all together. But I was thinking about another, monumental event that happened was hiring the marketing firm, because that's why we're sitting in front of these microphones, you know, and all that stuff that went into that, or putting the, new website, our list on the wall, all that kind of stuff, all these parts of the maturation process that have happened or still happening. And, it's a moving, living organism. So it continuously changes and updates and improves. But that was another big thing where we all got together and spent some time trying to,
for sure.
figure things out.
And that's that's another one of those examples where when Ford came to us with this idea, and so make no mistake, when Ford comes with an idea, we're probably doing the idea. He's checking with us, but he wouldn't have brought an idea that he thought was a bad idea to test this, to say hey, let's see if they realize this is a bad idea. That's not how we run. Ford's done his due diligence if he's going to bring you the idea. But I remember thinking about it and being like, okay, but like I'm trying to understand it. And I remember the first time we met Aaron, we were at the Heritage, and we met him in the back room, and it's whatever. This is broadcast, but he was on his phone. You remember? Like it drew my attention. Like he was on his phone.
Yeah,
he
guys were not
really
too thrilled about
present.
that. He wasn't very present in the room.
He wasn't very present in the room, and I was like, I don't know how this can be like the guy that he thinks. But listen, that guy could take pictures. I mean, and he built something that took a lot of great pictures for a lot of companies, and then did a lot of other things. Now, similarly, when it was time to go, I think we all realized it, and that's the really comfortable part of our relationship. The three of us is two of the three of us are rarely not on the same page. I'm not saying we're always on the same page. We're not. Sure. That's untrue. But usually, two of the three of us can see what the writing on the wall is, or what the best decision is, and then we can talk about it and be big enough as people to say like, okay, I can see this isn't. I don't 100% agree, but I see where you're going. This is the direction we're going to go, and get on board, and everybody go that direction. And we went that way into the marketing firm and out of the marketing firm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But their handprints are all over a lot of stuff that we do. And a lot of the decisions we made after the fact were based on seeing the good of what they did and saying, okay, how do we replicate that?
Right.
You know, so that's another one. That is another one that's a good point, you know, and you bring up a great point, Bryan, with what does the next decade look like for us in terms of how we work together, in what space, in what area, in what venues. What does that look like? And trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? And it's going to be, I think it's going to be fun. I think it's interesting. But it's also, as Ford said on another podcast, I think, you know, change scares people, you know, so
sure.
So changing makes people uneasy, and we're just people, you know what I mean? So it makes me uneasy. I'm comfortable with chaos, so I'm okay. But I acknowledge I'm a lot more comfortable if I can just yell Bryan across the room than if I got to call you on the phone.
Yeah.
You know, but in a really transparent way, it's not a discussion that we didn't have probably 5 years ago of what would Berg look like in 10 years from 5 years ago. You know, so 5 years from now,
sure.
Bryan's kids are out of high school. Where does Bryan want to be? Does Bryan want to be sitting in this office? You know, like these are discussions we've had, and, you know, Ford's talked a lot about communication, and that's sort of stuff that maybe we don't communicate out because we feel like it's not a real thing. I like to communicate that which is actual. I don't want to tell you like, hey, here's this, you know, like thought I had that may have absolutely no bearing on anything. I'm going to communicate something that's impactful to people actively, not something that's like some crazy thought I had. And so, you know, that's when sometimes things seem like they're coming from someplace like, how did Dan and Ford and Bryan get to this spot? Like there was probably a lot of thinking and discussions and time spent discussing the thing before it to say like, okay, this is the next most logical step. And then we make the step and then we broadcast that step.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, because when you lift your foot up to put the next step down, you know, it might not move in the right direction. And so, you know, you're waiting until you put the foot down to kind of communicate it, because what if you have to pull your foot back, or what if you have to put your foot to the right or the left because something didn't work out? So it's, you know, it's not for lack, but it's also, you know, we don't want people to be exhausted by things that don't get to happen. So you just kind of wait until there's the right time to put that message out there. We didn't get our sports saying in. My favorite saying like that is you can't steal second with your foot on first.
Yes.
You got to go.
Yeah.
You know, so, but that's the thing is usually your companies aren't really broadcasting. Usually you steal second, then you say you stole second. Usually you're on your way. You know, the announcer doesn't say he's going to steal second usually. He says like, and he's going, because you see them going, you know, because there was 30 head fakes in there that he was never going to run on a bunch of other times. So, you know, and you sort of think about that.
3 pitchbacks.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know how many you're allowed now.
Only 2 disengagements now, right?
Yeah. You got a pitch clock. There's all kinds of stuff.
We're not going on a rant here, but between what they're doing to baseball and the kickoffs in football, I don't even know what these sports are anymore. Like, it's just like whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a completely other thing. But when you said about that, I'm like watching. It's like, this is not football. Like, this is not like.
Yeah,
the sport.
I mean, the baseball thing blows my mind just from, you know, playing baseball for a lot of years. You played baseball, Bryan. You played baseball?
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Right? That if you were only allowed to throw over twice, wouldn't I just try and draw 2 throws?
And you have an automatic steal.
Hey, you can't come over here. I'm stealing.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't understand why there's, but I guess maybe there are more. I didn't actually look statistically if steals increased as a result of it.
I don't know if they have or not. I mean, part of it is the timing. Like, I do agree that there was a period of time in the last 10 years where baseball games got really long. And I think like fan engagement had to have gone down because who can invest 5 hours in a baseball game, right? So I think that was part of it.
I also think it's TV. Like you could spend a lot of hours at a sports event, and it not seem as long because you're engaged. But as a TV event, you can't have every game going an hour beyond when it's supposed to go. So I don't not get it, but it is.
Yeah. And the other thing for me is like this: you don't do signs anymore.
Yeah,
that was like a thing, you know.
That one does drive me crazy.
That's like part of the whole thing. And now I guess there are buzzers in their hats.
The pitch comm, when these guys are like, the pitch comm's not working. I'm like, so use your fingers. You know, like
still a way to do this
forever.
We all know we want number 2.
Yeah, forever. Guys use their fingers. Yeah, and
let's bring the fastball high and in.
The pitch comm one, like certainly like the whole like sign stealing stuff, right? Between NFL. NCAA, the big one there, obviously. Baseball.
Houston was all kinds of trouble for that.
I certainly get it, but like, I don't know. If the system breaks, I don't think that should be like oh, let's stop the game and figure it goes out.
So far,
but we were in junior high playing baseball, and when you played the team again, you switched up to a different set of signals. Like, I'm a little confused on how Major League this is happening because of the fact that like we had different signals, or we had rub off signals to say, oh, okay, don't take the first signal. Like, we had that playing a team twice a year in junior high. Like, and they're like, I can't believe they do that. I'm like, this is the Major League. These guys are making millions of dollars. They're going to try and find every edge they can. If you can't figure that out, you're on your own.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the communications bother me more in football than they do in baseball. Right. Because now, I mean, it's at some points on the college level, I think you're watching very close to a video game. You're watching a really smart coach who used to be probably a quarterback or some other role that would see the field. And they're just, I mean,
well, I like when they hold up the big billboard
picture of
like
a wolf and a dog, a hot dog. I'm like, I don't even know I think they're just messing with people.
Yeah.
I don't think it means anything. But what I go to is I can't imagine how great the Florida Gators could have been with Spurrier back in the day if Spurrier could have actively called the play, like called the audible. Like, you know, that's because Spurrier, you know, there's a famous line from Steve Spurrier where he would say, and I'm going to mess it up a little bit, but if the quarterback throws the ball and the receiver doesn't catch it, I better get a new receiver because the ball is going where he said. Like before his play, that's why they always said the Gators quarterbacks were never like the greatest NFL quarterbacks because they were system quarterbacks because of Spurrier. But imagine if Spurrier could have actively told you what play to change it to once he saw the defense.
Yeah.
Like that like ruined something for me. There's something to be said for like Peyton Manning just standing back there and trying to figure it out himself.
Having to adjust on the fly.
100 times. But I think, you know, to tie it back to us, like, things change, right? That's part of the game. Like, we've changed from where we started.
Yeah. I mean, if you could have told Ford, if I tried to sell Ford on the idea of a podcast with cameras, even 5 years into this, he would have, I might not work here. Like he would have been like, all right, I made a wrong choice. We need to get rid of you.
That's right.
You're way too Jersey. You're out.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting that like Ford proposed the cameras.
This was Ford's idea.
Yeah.
The whole thing, the podcast and then the cameras, totally Ford's idea.
Yeah.
We were out, we were out with Ford's peer group, and Matt Bachtel. He said to Aaron, he was like, "I feel like I know you already." He said, "Like I know what teams your kids play for. Dan talks about you a lot." Aaron was like, "How does this guy know me?" And I was like, "The podcast. I talk about you a lot on the podcast." So, but you know, it's a funny thing that I think that's another thing when you talk about like big steps for us is the point of this podcast was purely internal. It was so our guys who would see more of, especially Ford and I, every day, would still get to see us, to interact with us, to hear us. And if you let me, you, or Ford talk enough, we will say something that means something to one of the guys, right? Whether it's identifying that they did a good job or saying that they're a great operator or saying Dan made a mistake, like whatever it is. If we talk enough, we're going to say those things. And that was the point of the podcast. It wasn't to do anything else other than to let our guys to try and effectively communicate. Ford always says like a shotgun blast. Like we're going to try and talk to you as many ways as we can because I can't be at every job every day now. You know what I mean? Ford can't run around all day. We're trying to do other things to facilitate the company being what we want it to be. And I mean, that's another thing, you know, over the past decade, talk about a crazy change is to get to this point.
Yeah, that's for sure. So it'll be interesting to see like what these things turn into. Yeah. If we if we are so fortunate 10 years from now to be sitting in a room talking about the 20 years ahead of us. Yeah.
That would be something. I mean, you'd have, how old's Addie?
Addie is 15.
15. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Addie would be 25, out of school.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, your girls would be in high school.
Yeah. I'm imagining the setup would be very different.
Yeah.
Logistically here, right? Because I just mean like digital, the world that all that kind of stuff happens. Like I think it's going to be a little different on that piece. But, you know, that's the reality of it is that like you got to be focused on both things, the long and the short. Because the short's how we get to the long, but you can't only focus on the short. You got to focus on both.
To make it like
my job is to focus on the long now, but I mean, we have to be focusing on both of them at the same time.
To make like a crazy analogy, when you're like the worst thing you can do when you're operating or like backing up a trailer, you know, driving is overcorrect, is those little motions. And so that's why the most important thing you can do is keep your vision on the long goal and then try and maintain that course while adjusting ever so slightly as all these different things happen. But you can't do that without a short-term plan. But you also can't do it without a long-term plan. Otherwise, you're just going to overcorrect. And that's going to be the next 3 months for us, right? As we come out of the biggest job we've ever done,
right? And
we're going to reestablish who we are. It's coming like a freight train. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean it fast. I mean like slow and steady. You know it's coming. Once we get out of Longwood and move on, I think you're going to see the best side of us because we're going to get back to doing what we do in the way that we do it, and be better for everything that happened over the last 3 to 4 years, but also completely refocused on realizing why we should or shouldn't have made a number of decisions, you know, and then apply them to formalize them to be able to be in a spot where we make good decisions going forward to make sure that there is a company 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, good points. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Covered a lot of ground in 10 years and I'm anxious. I'm eager to see what that looks like in the future. So thanks for joining us today, folks. I hope you got something from this episode and we hope you come back.